Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind Body and Spirit Show. I am so excited about today's guest. He would be considered a lifelong experiencer who has interacted with the multidimensional worlds. Since an early age, he has been awakened to things that are outside the normal range of perception of just the physical world. He has had many out-of-body experiences and has encountered ghosts, aliens, and other dimensional beings. He has been taken out of body, time travel journeys, and has remembered many of his past lives. In his early 20s, he started having terrifying experiences of sleep paralysis. He began having out-of-body experiences where guides and masters would teach him things in other realms. Since then, he has been studying various modalities and spiritual practices with teachers from around the world. He graduated from the Institute of Energy Wellness in 2005 and began working with ancient healing techniques and became a student of Algonquin shamanism. He is the author of 5 books, including Forbidden Knowledge, Egyptian Postures, Yosef Codes, and Atlantis Codes, and one more. Welcome to the show, Jason Quitt. What's up, brother?
How are you doing, Matt?
Doing tremendous, man. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm finally glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a beautiful day in Ontario, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So to give the audience a little bit of a background, you and I met Contact in the Desert with John D'Souza, who's also been on the show. And that's where we kind of got to know each other, make friends, realize that we're both Canadian. Then I started to learn more about you and your story. And the more I look into it, I have your book. I've had the time to go through the chapters. It's definitely on the top of my list. And I'm going through just thinking, oh my goodness, like this is really incredible stuff. So do you want to give the audience just a little bit of background on you, your history, and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Like you said, I'm a lifetime experiencer. And what that just means is that I grew up having multiple experiences of paranormal or just phenomenon in general. And everything from ghosts to outer body experience to clairaudience, clairvisual, astral travel, you name it. I've probably experienced it over my lifetime, and it was just completely natural for me. So I even came here with pre-birth memories. So I remember before I was born, I remember choosing my parents, getting to observe them before I was born, and then being born. Um, and then from there, it was just the craziness started, I guess. Um, so I would say I was pretty psychic as a child, and I would definitely see spirits or ghosts, especially at nighttime. During the day was very different, but there's something about the nighttime. Once that sun goes down, suddenly, as your brain waves start to shift and you start to go to sleep, this whole other world started to awaken to me, and I could start to see or feel different things around me. And I think I even started to have my first past life rememberings very early on, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I started to remember different past lives. So this has been going on with me basically my whole life. But it wasn't really until my early 20s that things just kind of really opened up and had this amazing awakening experience, which we'll get into a little later. But, you know, what I found really interesting growing up is that I would have these very intense experiences. I would have this shadow in my room, which I can only describe as a shadow, and it would be in my closet. So at nighttime, I'd really have to push my closet door shut to make sure that I can sleep. And some nights that door would just open up by itself, and there would be something standing in my closet. And they would take me on different journeys. I think, and I still don't really fully understand what they were showing me, but They would take me into the basement and show me coffins. Maybe they were showing me that they were passed. And then they would sometimes take me um, almost like a time travel thing where it's not really my house, it's another house on that location. And then when I'd look out the window, it would be a different timeline. I wouldn't recognize anything. So this was kind of like my first introduction in this life into this dimensional shifting or time traveling once we leave our bodies in the dream world.
Okay. All right. So that's a lot. That's super interesting, because I've had, mediums on the show, Jamie Butler, other people, Isabella Green, who I think a lot of us are, a lot of the intuitives anyway, shut down this psychic ability or these past life rememberings when we're kids. So there's this, I don't know if you've seen it on Facebook, but some kid came back as a reincarnation and he remembered where he died in World War II and was able to find the spot and just, beyond, there's no way he should know that, right? So you're definitely not the only case. And I'm just curious, like, what was it like when you grew up to have these experiences? And people probably think you're, you know, there's no one that you can relate to kind of understand what's happening to you and to continue to have these experiences and make sense of them.
Absolutely. And some of them were very traumatic. To relive a past life, you usually relive the moments of death. So you get to experience some pretty traumatic things. So if you're 4 or 5 years old, experiencing pretty emotional death scenes of a past life, what happens? You're emotional, you run to your parents in the middle of the night crying, telling them what happened to you, and they calm you and just say, it's just a nightmare. Everybody has these nightmares, and just go back to sleep. So I just assumed that everything that was happening to me when I go to sleep and have these outer body or outer worldly experiences were just nightmares, and everybody else had the same thing as me. So um, I really think that once we believe things are imaginary, that is just in our mind and is not real, I really think that that starts to go away. And I feel like I had a very active childhood, but I think when I started to hit puberty, that's when the abilities went away. So I didn't really have anything. I think because I remember my last biggest one was, how old was I? Had to have been 11 years old. So this was, I guess, just before puberty. And I had a past life remembrance of some friend of mine in school. So I remembered me and this person together in a past life as knights, and we had a really awful death. So um, I remember as as an 11-year-old in a new school, um, basically telling this person, "Don't you remember who we were?" And very confused when they didn't understand what I was talking about. I said, "Don't you know that we were this in this past life?" And I actually killed him in that past life. So I'm like, "Don't you remember that I killed you?"
That'd be pretty messed up to say to a kid. I think your parents are going to
Yeah.
be called to be like, "What is happening?"
Yeah. Well, we're actually still friends, which is, it shows you that these connections that you have in this life, we've probably been around together, even myself and you, we've probably been around together, and we've had different histories or different timelines intersecting in different points. And this is how I think we all operate. I think even our families, um, actually, I know for a fact that many of my family members have been my family members in past lives, and we just keep changing roles. For example, um, in this life, my mother is my mother, but in another life, my mother was my daughter. So it's like we have these reversals of roles. And we usually come together to support each other, different friends, different families, to get us on the right path in this world.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember reading a book called The Journey Home by Cryon. So for those of you who don't know who Cryon is, he's a channel, and there's a amazing book called The Journey Home. And in that book and some other ones, it's essentially saying the same thing. Before we come back, we get to choose our parents. We kind of see what's going on, and we can actually switch roles. So this is something that I've heard, that I'm like, okay, that's possible, because the way that I reference it on the podcast a lot is like most people probably haven't had an out of body experience or a multidimensional experience or even a very vivid lucid dream. Where for me, I've developed a skill where you have to put effort into it continuously. So I'm actually writing a how to lucid dream like mini book right now, but it takes effort. You have to actually continuously do it, or you lose the skill. Like it stays for a bit, but you got to do the thing. But I've been in these realms, and so to have a concept like that, it's not too far of a stretch, because in those realms, it really shatters 3D reality, physical reality. Even science is showing now is not what we think it is. It's very holographic and whatever. I had William Brown on, who's a biophysicist, and he just blew my mind. I had kind of barely just hanging on to what he was talking about. So I kind of, where I'm trying to get to with this is that so you're having these experiences. Do you find now with doing all this stuff, because I've been through your book, there's a lot of information in there. What do you think that the reason is you're having these experiences, and what have you learned from them? What are the most important things you've learned? And what do you feel is going on the planet now? Because I've heard a lot about, you know, doing contact in the desert, lots of interesting information all over the place. What's your perspective on just the reason why you're having these experiences, what you've learned from them, and maybe what we can apply on this side of the spectrum to, because I can't come into your world the way that you can yet. I'm coming soon, but it might take me a bit.
Well, I think, and I've always thought this, that what I experience is just part of the human experience. There's nothing special about it. It's just something that we all have. But unfortunately, and I would say through thousands of years of trauma, through thousands of years of different belief systems, and just the way this world has gone, um, it was taboo to go into these worlds because it is very freeing. And that's the first thing that I learned, is that once you experience outer body experience or even near death experience, once you realize that there's something else outside of this world and it's completely real, your brain is not losing oxygen, and it's definitely not imaginary. You're not hallucinating. Once you get over that hump and you're stepping out of your body, it just changes your mind. It changes the way you see yourself. It changes the way you see the world. And suddenly you're out of this box or frame of reference of what this belief system of what our world is supposed to be. And once you step outside what our world is supposed to be, you realize that all those things are just prisons of the mind. There's somebody else's thoughts, there's somebody else's dreams, there's somebody else's beliefs, and they're holding you in this pattern or reality of this is what our world is supposed to be like. But when you step out, you realize, no, that's not it at all. And then you start to get this self-realization thing happening, where you start to choose what you want to believe. You start to choose what you want to see in your reality. And you start to make these choices that better your life and those people around you from a different perspective. And in that state of reference is very freeing, is very freeing. So I could understand why religions or belief systems or even governments or even secret societies would not want the population to start awakening to know that there is something more, without the religious dogmas of you're going to hell or it's only through us that you will reach here. Everybody is connected to the source. we are all part of this system. We're not separate. And once we realize that, then all these things just fall away.
Right. Yeah, totally agree, man. My mind is going a lot of different places with this. So, one thing that I'm really curious about is you're going to these. So at one point, this is happening to you. These beings are coming, and you're having these experiences. So for me, I can say when I had my first meditation out of body experience, it takes your brain and everything that you think that you know and just destroys it for you handily. There is no coming back. It is completely destroyed. And so you definitely see the world. It's a whole nother perspective. It's like going from 2D to 3D, from 3D to 5. It opens up a whole realm of, oh my God, I have no idea what's going on. But it does make you more acutely aware of things that are not real and when people are trying to manipulate you. Um, so that's one thing. Um, so these experiences are happening. Then you're getting now teachers and guides. Can you talk a little bit about some of those teachers? You talk about Thoth, who Gerald Clark. I'm not sure if you know who he is. He's a former engineer for IBM, a ridiculously smart human being. Had an awakening. He told me personally that Thoth started to communicate with him, and that's where he got a lot of the information about the Anunnaki, about aliens, and all this kind of stuff. Now he's like the leading source on this. So for people who find aliens to be a stretch, like have a debate with Gerald Clark. That will be a challenge for you because that guy is really intelligent fellow. So who were these masters? What were they teaching you? And what were those experiences like?
Sure. But let's just back up a little because you made some really good points here. The most amazing thing is, when you start sharing your experiences that you had an outer body experience or a being came to you and started to talk to you, the first thing that they say to you is, you're just having a very imaginary dream. And granted, I've had some really amazing dreams, but what I find incredible about this whole experience, and you just mentioned it, is that you're given information. You're taught things that you've never heard of before, um, and you wake up and you're jotting it down. And I remember when this started to happen to me. This was right at the beginning of YouTube. So YouTube wasn't really a thing yet. So I was AOLing those questions, and on Yahoo, and so the internet was still a good hub of information, but I would receive information that I had no idea what I was talking about. Like I would receive information on, like let's for example say EMFs. So I'd get a download of information talking about how dangerous EMFs are in the future of EMFs and what's going to be broadcast in the future and how it affects your biology. And, I'm not a researcher. I never went to university, so I'm getting downloads of information and then I have to go online and see, is this a thing? Does this exist? So it's a really amazing confirmation once you start to receive information, and then you can actually find other people or other sources, especially in the scientific community, that's actually talking about the information that you've received. So that is number one when people say, oh, it's just a dream. It's almost like, you hear stories from shamans in the rainforest where someone is sick and they go to sleep at night and they have a dream, and it's a plant talking to them, and the plant is telling them, this is what you do, this is how you cook it, and this is how much you give. And they wake up in the morning, they find that plant, they prepare it just as if they were told in their dream, and it heals the person. So I think that this is part of a human experience, that we're connected to this universal mind, I'll say, this universal web of connectedness, so that when we need to know specific information, be it healing, plant medicine, or even galactic history of who we are, because we're totally in amnesia, we have that connection, and it comes to us when we're ready. So I really think that the reason it started to happen to me in the first place was because I was lost. I didn't really have any good sources of information. I wasn't searching for anything really. And I also think I was very sick and ill. And I don't think I made the right life choices. And I was sick all my life. And I felt like I was actually dying. And I think that's why the veil was so thin for me, that I could just easily leave because I was already 1 foot out the door. But through that information and through those travelings, that's when I started to get connected to different beings who would show me things, like you mentioned Thoth. I had nothing to do with Egypt. I didn't really care for Egypt, didn't really have any books on Egypt. It was definitely something that was not on my mind. But for some reason, I had this being who was Thoth. I knew immediately was Thoth. And he would take me on out of my body on journeys, and we would go back to Egypt. So I'd basically be in Egypt in different temples, be taken down different hallways, be taken through different initiations, and I was taught many things from Egypt. And one of the main things that I talk about is called the Egyptian postures of power. Um, this thing right here. And I've been teaching this to people since 2007. So 10 years I've been teaching this. And what it was is that I'd be taken at night into a temple, and there would be this pharaoh looking person standing in front of me. And they would be standing in very specific postures. And all I would do was copy what they were doing and just stand in front of them. There was never any communication. They never spoke to me. They just stood in postures, and I just copied them. And it felt like something would open up above my head, and it would feel like I'm standing underneath a waterfall. But if that waterfall was like photons or solar radiation, that's what it felt like. So it was all this heat that was going through my body. And I would wake up from these experiences still locked into those postures. And I would still feel that solar energy going through me. And when I would break the posture, the energy would shut off. So I started to document all these postures that are being taught to me. And I was told that I needed to practice them. And once I started to practice these postures, all these things that I had within me, like ailments, I was dyslexic, I stuttered, I had IBS, I was like 140 pounds at 6'5", like really bad, you know. So basically, I was a walking skeleton that wasn't really having good sleeping or eating, or. But anyways, these postures started to turn my life around and started to heal me, and it also started to sensitize me. And when I mean sensitize, um, like, yes, I could have these really amazing outer body experiences, and yes, different beings can come to me. But when I would wake up during the daytime, I was just Jason. You know, I didn't feel anything. I was numb, and I'll use the word numb. I'm numb like everybody else. But these postures, practicing these postures like a qigong exercise, I started to actually feel energy physically. And I could still feel it now. So it awakened this sleeping, energetic body, this light body within us. We all have it, and we just have to awaken it. And once we awaken our light body, while we're physically awake, we start to get very sensitive. So I can feel energy coming in and out of my energy field. I can feel the energies going through the chakras, the meridians. I could walk into a space and feel the energies of the space and the environment. And that awakened to me very strongly once I started to do this Qigong system, or these postures that was taught to me from Thoth and these other Egyptian beings who were showing me these postures at nighttime.
That's amazing, dude. There's there's a lot I want to say there. I think just on the energy front, I'll just speak on that. I saw I don't know, it was like a YouTube video of a guy who basically had he got hurt and he couldn't speak. I can't remember. I just saw it today and glanced at it, but essentially something happened to him and he couldn't communicate with people. But what happened is he realized that some people he wanted to come in because he could feel their energy. So some of them were energy suckers and he didn't want them to visit him, and some of them would give him energy and he wanted to visit. But within this state that he was in, he didn't have a choice. It's on my Facebook. If people want to check that out, but it's essentially around energy. To me, it's pretty basic. You go into the wrong part of town, underground bar where everyone wants to steal your stuff. You can feel that. It's like a wall. The other way that I like to express it is that if everyone thinks you're dead at sea, and then, you get home and you're alive, say 2 or 3 months later, and all your friends and family and loved ones are waiting for you, that energy is going to be so high. And you're going to feel that, and it's going to be beautiful and wonderful. So we are energetic beings. We do have energy bodies. That could be a stretch for some people, but probably not most of the listeners for the podcast. And one example I have of that is my friend Daniel Raphael, who was on the podcast, who he's such an interesting guy. He's kind of like a spiritual savant. You might have met him at Contact in the Desert. And when I got to know him a little bit more, he told me a story about being like, I don't know how old, between like early 20s. And he was at this like band, and he had a thought in his mind. He goes, maybe they like me. He had never had a thought in his mind before that it was possible for someone to like him. He's like, man, I'm talking to him. He's like, you have no idea how mind controlled I was. He's like, I had no feeling. I completely numb to the next level. Like, he went through healing and ayahuasca and just everything to heal him, all these therapists and different things like that. But he recalled a iboga experience where he said he was on the medicine, and he asked, I guess you can communicate with the plant intelligence. And he said, can you help me and lift me up or clear some energies? Like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. So he activates pineal gland in the space. But he said in an instant, he saw all of the external forces, his parents, the friends, the conditioning, the TV, everything as mental, energetic thought forms. And they just got ripped from him. And he's like, my life I knew was never going to go back. And it was a totally different experience. So, that's a next level kind of thing of what we're talking about. So with your experience of doing these postures, is it similar to doing Qigong? Would you recommend that people do that? Or is it any practice good, or is this like the supreme practice? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'll just go back to what you were saying. Think of a program, or think of a pattern in a person's life, or an influence like a parent's or a friend's. Think of that energy as a net. All right. So when that influence comes to your energetic field, it's this energetic net that wraps around you. And when you are unaware that these things exist, you're basically wearing 10 winter coats of these nets. So that's why you're numb. That's why you're being pulled in all these directions. That's why you start to feel or think things that you shouldn't be feeling and you shouldn't be thinking. It's because all these outer influences are wrapped around you. And when you start to do Qigong, for example, what you're doing is you're trying to strengthen your own net. You're trying to strengthen your own reality matrix or your own energy fields. And when you strengthen your own fields, those other nets are of lower, you can call them lower frequency or vibration, but they're just lower thought forms. And when you're strengthening your own energy, a lot of these nets will just fall off you. So by strengthening your own energy, you get rid of all these other influences. And in fact, you start to take control of your own energy bodies. And that's probably the most important thing we can learn from this. One of the most powerful ways that I am aware of is doing practices like Qigong, where you're purposefully strengthening different energy fields of your body. You're purposefully pulling energy into different centers of your body and connecting yourself. And when you continue to do this, you're actually building your own pattern of energy around you, so that when these lower influences come to you, you'll feel it. And this is what I love about being, you could call me an empath or energy sensitive, but what you're really doing is you're learning, what does your energy feel like? What is not your energy field, right? There's a distinction. Before, it's very hard to figure out what's yours and what's not. But when you really get a strong sense of your own energy field, when a lower energy or a thought form or an entity or someone else's energy comes towards you, you feel it instantly. You know it's not good. You know that you need to step away or do a clearing or just not give in to that energy field. So it's a very good ability to have. And the way that I was taught was through Qigong. I did learn a couple different Chinese methods first. I learned Qi Lao, Qigong, and then I learned Falun Dafa. And then after that, that's when I was taught the Egyptian postures, and that's what I've been using ever since.
Interesting. I love the analogy of the net. I never thought about it like that, and that's a really deep understanding. I feel like when people can give you a really great analogy, they have a nice, deep level of understanding. The better the analogy, the deeper level of understanding. So I kind of just imagined, the weight or strength of your family's net is going to be more. It's going to be a thicker gauge of rope, let's say, over your head. But then, interestingly enough, I kind of saw it as a Russian doll type of deal, where you got your family net, and then if you can escape that or get out of that, then you've got your school, your friends, your little subcultures and school. Then you got government, and then TV, and it's just like, where do these bloody nets end? To come back to the real source truth, of like what is actually who you are. Do you want to add something? Because I feel like you could
Yeah,
meld
yeah.
this.
Well, what you're saying is perfect, because the question should be is, all these nets are pulling us and influencing us or manipulating us. What happens when we're net free? Who are we? If nothing is pulling us, influencing us, or speaking to us, what are we at that very fundamental level? And that's what we, as a culture of human beings, need to figure out. Who are we when we let go of all these nets? We cast the nets off. And that's when we discover who we truly are. And my awakening was the understanding that we are multidimensional beings, that we have many different bodies, like a Russian doll. And we could use those bodies to enter into different worlds and dimensions, but they all work together, and they're all basically one being in different forms and different realities. And it's the awareness and connection between the physical humanness of who we are to those multidimensional beings that are also who we are as well. So we start to be able to travel. For example, I can be sitting here in a physical form, and I could close my eyes, or I don't even need to close my eyes. I could put my attention to another body in another dimension, and I could ask it things. Or if that body in that dimension is a very good healer, I can send that body to somebody else. I'm not sending an entity. I'm not sending an angel. I'm not sending a thought form. I'm actually broadcasting another version of myself in a different level that can deal with that situation at that level of consciousness. So we start to become multiple and one at the same time. It's a very hard concept to understand. But I've experienced, I'll say, seeing through more than one eyes at once. And once you start to understand that, you can be the observer, you can be the witness, the observer, and the person that's causing you violence. You can be all three of those people at once and see through each one of their eyes. It's a very interesting way of looking at the world, or having a deeper understanding of your connection to all three people that are in that situation. I don't know if that makes any sense.
And I'm with you. I love how you just went ham with it all of a sudden because I knew we were going to. So we started generally together. Now we're going there. Okay, so and this is what I like because I again only have fragments of understanding and experience. Though this is the whole thing of trying to draw the line. If you don't have an experience with it, then it just seems, how is this possible? But because I've had the experiences, I have the idea. I've heard of the concepts before that we can have literally different forms of consciousness all at once. The one specific story I have is at Dr. Joe Dispenza's advanced workshop. I talk about him frequently. He has people having Kundalini experiences on EEG scan where they go into 1,000,000 microvolts, which is record setting, out of body experiences where people are traveling to other dimensions. And one of the stories he shares was right around, I think he did either What the Bleep Do We Know, Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole, or a documentary. And, he was kind of in the scientific community and there's pushback, right? There's no proof that meditation can heal you of these things. He's like, no, I know it can, and I'm trying to create the proof and do those kinds of things. And he was hesitant and he went through this experience and he essentially says he was in a meditation and he popped out to a past life where he was a philosopher. And what happened was they grabbed him from where he was and they basically put him on some sort of like torture device and said, if you don't stop going around telling people all this nonsense or philosophy of whatever you're doing, we're going to kill you. And so he's like, do you agree? And he said, I had the experience through the eyes of me being tortured. I could feel it, but simultaneously I was witnessing it. And he's like, it's just this other level. And again, it's so beyond words for me. Like, this space is so beyond words. It's like, another way I put it is if a duck were to become conscious and then this experience happens and then he goes back to his duck friends and tries to explain it, he's only got one word: quack. And we haven't developed the vocabulary for these experiences because it's just so far beyond mind. It's just kind of information or light or something around those, something like that. So I guess my question now that we're going to go down this rabbit hole, because I'm curious personally, what do you think is, so if we have these multidimensional bodies, what can I do to apply that information for myself to, let's say, shrink the size of the veil and access these other me's or this higher state more permanently? And that's kind of, in my research and what I've been doing, it's been a consistent growth to expand my own awareness, to my own knowledge towards truth. And what it is expansive and it is light, and it takes some a lot of work, a lot of personal energy work. And just to go back on the rope analogy, to get out of that rope, keep going in, because that's how you know who you are. And that's how I've kind of, let's say, earned my own awareness, is a consistent, like, thousands of hours of meditation going. You can do it different ways, but then you have that knowing of my energy, you're full of baloney. That's wild, but you're giving off, like, really good energy. But you know yourself, and that's the most important thing. And the only one it really matters to is you anyways, your own freedom, your own expansion. So I don't know if you want to, if there's a question in there.
Well, I would say you're right. But remember, collectively as a human race, we're in a net as well. So we have this kind of morphogenic field of what it is to be human and what is that experience. And that's basically built up over thousands of years. And yes, there is many multidimensional influences on that vision or of that reality of what we live in. So I will put out a warning to people, because we live in a polarity universe. Okay, we have to understand that there is dark, there is light. And when you start to put your foot and test the waters of that ether, that fourth dimension, that next step of evolution, we'll call it the astral. All right. Once we take that first step into leaving these fields, there are things on that side that don't want that to happen. So people may get attacked. They may start to have entities or attachments or even manifestations of illness, be it physical, mental, or emotional. And that is just part of the process. It's part of the process of taking that first step, because, we all have entities. That is a reality of this world. We all have dimensional beings that are connected to us. And just like we take food from the earth, from the minerals, the plants, the animals, just, we sustain ourselves from this third dimensional reality. Our energies, our emotions, our thought forms, our um, spiritual nature broadcasts an energy field into other dimensions. And other beings use that as food or use it as energy to sustain themselves. So we're part of this multidimensional chain of existence. So if we start to let go of, let's say, our fears, a fear is an emotion, it puts out a very specific energy. When we start to release our energies of fear and go into something else, there are beings, multidimensional beings, that are attached to us because we emit that energy of fear. So these beings now start to get scared. I'm losing my food source. So they will actually try to come in and scare you or do something to you so that you will generate that fear again. You see what I'm getting at? So it's almost like as we start to let go, we come into conflict. And it's a play of conflict and peace that we have to get the balance on. So once we step out and we start to have these experiences, we may have other things come into our lives. It may be chaotic. I remember when I first made a decision, and this is very important. When we first take that step into awakening, we make a decision that you want to change. You want to be who you are and know the truth. Once you make that decision in your life, you start to change your energy fields. You start to change the energies that start coming through you. And what I noticed was my friends and family around me, they started to lash out at me for no reason. They would just explode, you know, and there was no reason for it whatsoever. But I knew that I was changing my energy, and the beings connected to them are afraid. And once I made that understanding and that connection, then I raised myself a little more, and they stopped. They were more at peace because they knew they couldn't attach themselves anymore. So we really need something called the spiritual practice. And I think this is what we were getting into, like your meditations, like your learning how to lucid dream, which is a spiritual practice, or even the Qigong. What you're doing is you're doing a spiritual practice to take control of your energies, to take control of your mind, so that when you start to awaken and realize what's your energy, what's not your energy, and what's influencing you, you can control and make the decisions of what you want to carry and what you don't want to carry. And I think that's a very, very important lesson we all have to learn.
Epic, dude. So yeah, man. I part of me is like, I just want to cut the cord that like draws the bridge for people and just go fully outer space, because I already have the cord. So I've heard that so many times that even Dr. Joe, again, just when he's explaining it to people, we're doing a pineal gland activation meditation, and he's like, as you uncover the layers, he's like, I debated whether to tell you this. He's like, you might encounter a being. He's like, it's okay, don't freak out. They just exist. And what I've heard on a global scale is that part of what's happening energetically on the planet is that beings or things feed off negative energy, fear mainly. And if you look at our society and how it's designed, well, it's a fear-based society. So that doesn't mean that it is beings, but that's what's going on. So the complete other side is love. And love and freedom and connection and source and light and all that kind of stuff. So I also read something recently that just talked about how when you're making this transition and you're moving into, your own empowerment, where, like say a being will try to feed on you and they do it as a little group, but when you're holding your energy state, they realize there's no food there, so they're just going to move on. So you're totally fine. And I know people personally that can see these things, and these are people that I know that are regular people, and you would never know that they could do this because they don't tell anyone, because people think you're absolutely insane. People think I'm insane, and I'm able to grab it, and most of the time I tell them how to do it. I was like, yo, this is what you have to do. This is a quick path. Here's a pineal activation meditation, but you have to want to make that choice, because once they know internally, once they make that switch, the reality is now totally different, and there's breath practices and things that you can do to get to that state, and then this becomes a very real thing. So I guess where I want to go with this, because I got you on the line, what is your perspective of what is going on the planet energetically? How do I ascend myself? How do we get as far out of this net into the most freedom, love, and out of this suppression? And I'm sure we could spend 2 hours talking about the history of the suppression, what's been going on. You and I have probably a similar understanding of that story, but what about getting out of it? And what do you kind of see as your overview of what's going on in this big, because you're going interdimensionally, speaking to aliens. My friend Crystal, she's like my 5D consultant. When something wild happens, I call her, and this girl is nuts. And so thank God I have her.
In a good way.
Yeah, in the best way, and like nuts to the average Joe, but like just knows what's going on. She's 25, scientist, like had to die and come back to life, and has all these abilities now. And I've seen her do unbelievable things firsthand. Just can't, it's amazing. So what do you what would you suggest as an individual listening to this to cut through their own veil, find their own freedom, and then maybe your overview of what's going on the planet and how we can build this new loving earth and experience for as many other people as possible?
Well, the first thing is we plant the seed. And the seed is that right now on the planet, there is an ascension process happening. So that is actually a seed that's been planted. This is what many people have been talking about for many years. It's been written about in many books. And what's actually happening is that, and I have my own theories. I just believe that our reality is so backwards that people are just waking up because it's just so obvious what's going on. But our generation, the generation coming up, we have something called the internet and YouTube, which is the freedom of information at your fingertips. Before, you would have to go to libraries, you'd have to search for things, you'd have to find these people, you would have to write a letter and send it. Right now we're in the information age. We're talking live. Okay, right now we're talking live on Facebook and YouTube, and people can listen to every word we say in real time. This has never happened before in our history. This is like the precursor to telepathy, transferring information at a rapid pace. And right now, people have that voice inside of them that's saying, something is wrong. I can feel that I have a real feeling inside of me that something is just not right in this world. I'm watching the politicians on TV, I'm watching the news, and I can see through the bullshit. I can just feel it. So what they're doing is they're going to a different source. They're going to the internet, but the internet is the catalyst to the internet, our internet of who we are. All right, because everything, and I'll say this, everything that is manifested into our reality is a reflection of what we are or what we've lost. That's a very important point. So maybe we created planes because before we knew how to fly. Maybe we're creating the internet because before we actually had this internet to transfer knowledge through time and space. So everything that we're creating is out of a need of something that we've lost or it's been taken from us. And I think if we start to learn that connection, that mirror from the physical into the inner world, we'll start to have a immense awakening. For example, you're talking about the pineal activation. I see a human being as a car. You know, when you put the key in the car and then you turn the battery on? The car is on, but it's not running, right? You know, you can turn the radio on, you know, open a window, put the air conditioning on, but the car's not on. The Kundalini awakening, the pineal activation is turning the key and starting the engine. And then suddenly you can drive and navigate these worlds. Before you were just stuck in your vehicle, you know? And I think this is where we're getting to. We're starting to understand that, for example, if we want to learn how to see without our eyes, we have to close our eyes. Okay, so we have this mirror effect. So when we're awake and we're opening our physical eyes and looking at the world, that is our input into 3D reality. If we meditate and we close our eyes, we start to use our inner vision and start to build that muscle. If we want to hear, you know what we do? We go into silence. We cut out our physical auditory signals, and then we'll start to hear our inner voice. So our senses are actually dual. And to strengthen those other senses, all we have to do is take away the physical senses. And then the chemistry of our brain changes, and we start to tune into different frequencies or awaken different gifts. And that's what I would call a spiritual practice, just like meditating, you know, being in silence, being still. You know, if you're very, very still, you may start to feel movement. So what is that movement you're feeling? You know, so we have to kind of go down that spiritual road, that spiritual practice to awaken these things that are dual within us. So what am I going to say to the people right now listening about what's happening on this planet? What's happening on this planet is, as people awaken, like myself, like you, like others, millions around the world are awakening already. As we awaken, we pull those that are asleep. We pull at their strings because they can see that there's something else going on behind our eyes. All right. And we actually enlighten them just by being in their presence. Got a fly in here. It's a confirmation, I guess. But and there's also energies coming to this planet. We're on something called the cosmic clock. We're on cycles, and we go from cycle to cycle and cycle to cycle. And we've been in a cycle of, I don't want to use the word darkness, we've been on a cycle of unconsciousness for a while. And now we're awakening and starting to become conscious or more aware of, wait a second, there's something else, and no politician or priest can tell us otherwise because we feel it, we know it, we can taste it. And that's where this awakening is coming from. It's an individual awakening. It's not you standing up, you know, on top of the CN Tower with a megaphone, screaming to the world, you know, wake up. Because nobody can do this but the person themselves. Nobody could pull them along. You know, we may be good examples. You know, we may be, you know, someone could look up to us and say, I like what that guy's saying. I like what that guy's doing. But we can't help them in that way. They have to actually do this work and to find themselves, because I really believe truth evolves. There's no one solid truth. Truth will really evolve with the state of consciousness you're in. So what I believe right now is different than what I believed a couple months ago. And I can't express that to somebody because they see the world very differently. And we have to acknowledge that and respect that and honor that in every single person. So even people that are what we would consider very much asleep and causing a lot of problems, they're they're in the place they need to be at that time in their life, and we have to honor that and move on our way. Don't let those people hold us back.
Wow,
I just
brother,
went on.
100. No,
I
that
just
was
went
wonderful, dude. I was hoping you're gonna keep going. I just sitting. I was like, oh man, very impressive information. I can second and feel the exact same way. Um, there's definitely a lot of different ways I want to go with it. I'm
Sorry.
trying to.
I
I'm
took
trying
it.
to. No, no, it was perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. So I'm just figuring out which way I wanted to go. Do you see, in from your perspective? I keep Sandra Walter was on. I've heard about. So I'm reading right now, the Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. Super intense book. It's so great. Um, Bear T. Spalding is a scientific researcher. Goes down to India. He meets some yogis. He figures out they can do incredible things. He follows them around for years with a bunch of researchers, and essentially Jesus appears in book 1 and 4 and 5 and 3, and Buddha appears, and all of this different stuff, and they're disappearing and reappearing. In the autobiography of a yogi, which Yogananda, when he died, he called his death. He peaced out. He's, for me, the most recent ascended master. I'm sure other ones are here too. But he said, yo, I'm going to die, and died and gone. And he talked about his master coming in on an orb, traveling to the astral realms, what's going on there. So anyways, in my personal research, I have seen ascension, the harvest, all of this come up continuously. For me, when I was younger, I was just like, what the every swear word F-bomb is going on? This is complete horseshit. And what pissed me off was that everyone just accepted it. It's like, what? No, this is so crazy. What the heck? So, oh my God. So, do you see some sort of harvest? Like, if you heard of the harvest, do you believe in the harvest? Do you see that? Like, I've heard, I'll just give you this, that we're having the opportunity to move into this higher state of consciousness without death. Like a huge, like almost a duck, and then one day all the ducks are conscious talking to us. Like, holy crap, they had like a conscious evolutionary leap. And we're like, wow, like ducks are a whole new thing now. So my perception of what's going on is like we get to be that whole new thing and level up without the death process. What do you feel about that kind of a statement?
Well, because we live in such an information age, there's many theories and there's many voices. There's many voices in this community of what they believe is the true reality, and which is fantastic because then we can discern and go through different things. But it always was very strange to me, this whole concept of now is the time of ascension. It's a very strange concept to me because when you're reading books or hearing stories, like you mentioned, Yogananda, there are masters walking among us. And there have always been masters walking among us. It's not something that's just happening in our age. This is something that's been happening since our beginning. And what I've been shown and taught is that the ascension process itself is the personal realization of their divine nature. Once we understand that within us, it doesn't matter what time period or wherever you are, once you make that decision or have that knowing that you are this divine being incarnate at this time and space, that is when you take the first step into the ascension process. So I feel right now there's a big push going on for us to take that step. And I think it's just because of the world we live in. I also think it's Mother Earth. I think the Earth has a very divine consciousness, and it speaks through the plants and the animals. And we're not taking care of this planet, and we're damaging our ecosystem, and we're out of order with creation. We're just completely out of order with creation. And because of that, the Earth is calling in higher dimensional beings to incarnate here, to be born on this planet, so that this higher wisdom, this higher knowing could be anchored and seeded back into the consciousness of mankind so that we can get on a better path. And I think right there is the whole point of why we're sitting and talking today.
Dude, hammers, man. It's an expression from snowboarding when somebody is just crushing it so hard, you just yell hammers. That's so good, dude. Man, I'm gonna have to definitely clip those. Really, really beautiful statement. I agree. Definitely an individual process. To be practical here, and I'm talking to you. We got people listening. What can we do as a practical step to start to experience these things? Because we're very much in the 3D shite. We're very much in the need of, I need to go get money. I got to survive in this crap. It's challenging. There's a lot of distractions that pull us. I think that we can definitely start to, limit distractions and start to get focused and go within and figure out what's important for us. That's the beginning. But from your point of view and everything that you've experienced, people might not, experience lucid dreaming or multi-dimensions or beings right away. It could happen. I just met a person when I was in Estonia recently she said in her own words that she was completely, unconscious, didn't know, and then just had an instant awakening. And it took her about a whole year to process because she was seeing things. She had no idea what was going on. So she had a whole year of processing. So that's can happen. So just in your perspective, some practical feedback for, how people can move towards more of a open understanding.
Well, first, I'd just like to say we don't need to have outer body experiences or some being speaking to us or taking us on journeys for us to make a huge change in our life. I say that the reason we have all these beings and outer body experiences is because we're the most stubborn. It's because we won't believe anything or do anything unless we get like ripped out of our bodies and shown these things.
Kind of
So I
like
think,
Doctor Strange is like, no, no,
yeah,
no, this doesn't exist. Boom. Oh, God.
right. So I think the reason maybe why I was so extreme is because maybe I was just as stubborn. I was stuck so hard in my ways that I needed that ripping to take place for me to change. Many don't. And I'll just say the most practical thing that we can do, and it's the number one thing we all have to do, and it will cause the most change, is to breathe. And when I say breathe, I mean right now we're all triggered. We all have our garbage, we all have our strings, and someone could look at us the wrong way. Someone could say that, like, they know exactly what to say to you to piss you off, you know, right? So people know what buttons to push. So you could either allow them to push your buttons and instantly react. So this is the game we're in. It's cause and effect. So I push your button, you react to me instantly. Now we start exchanging energy and we're feeding many things, you know? So we're not in control of our reactions. But if we become the observer and just breathe, so if someone comes and pushes your button, don't react, don't go into any emotion, don't get your thought forms all running a mile a minute. Just stop, breathe, observe the situation, and realize what's happening here. All you're doing is perpetuating the same cycles that have been going on forever. And if we stop and breathe and let that go, these influences, these manipulations, this lower form of consciousness will start to leave you alone. And if more people would just step back and breathe in a situation, I saw this guy yesterday cut someone off. He pulled up in front of him, rolled down his window. You can hear this guy yelling like across the street. It was loud. And I'm thinking, what if this guy just breathed and realize that, maybe there was another situation where the guy had to cut him off. We don't know. Or maybe he was just cutting him off because he knew he could push his buttons. He's had one of those days. So if we can just step back, become the observer, and breathe in these situations, so much will happen in our lives, and we'll have more peace. And I think that's a first step we can take.
That's wonderful, man. I 100% agree with that. Super important. I'll just add on, I think it's an energy game. If you're expressing energy out, it's kind of like the video game Street Fighter or any other video game, but you have like a certain amount of bricks until your energy is depleted. Well, you get 24 hours. And if you're giving out your bricks of energy towards hate, that's like a lot of energy. It's not one brick, it's like 3 or 4. But you hold that energy within you. And this guy, Ronnie Teasdale, I had a few podcasts ago, he was winning these CrossFit competitions without training at all, and he was curious why this was happening, and other people were really curious why this was happening. And so he's been trying to figure that out, but it was essentially conservation of energy mixed with going outside naked and just getting some good old sun every single day, just earthing, grounding Mother Earth, real energy. But he wasn't going around pushing all this energy out. As you observe, and also when you're making these micro decisions, you look at TV and you watch CSI and all this different thing and American Idol or whatever nonsense you're watching, you're using energy and how that emotionally makes you feel. Just think of it energetically, what's happening to you. And so if we can monitor that and realize, like we become conscious of, I'm not going to give energy to this because that's like one of your Super Mario or Street Fighter chips. You have that choice to give it away, and when you hold it, then that's more energy for your own creation. So fantastic insight.
And
I wanted.
I'll just add to that is that there's a big problem right now, and many people go to the doctors because they're just fatigued all the time. They can't get up. They're tired. They wake up and they feel more tired when they wake up. And I'm not saying this is for every case, but many people have a very overactive mind. They have chatter going on in their mind 24/7. And thinking and thoughts, we need to change the word of thinking and thoughts to projecting energy. That's what thinking and thoughts is projecting energy. So if you're 24/7 projecting energy from your mind, you're draining your entire self. So that's why these meditators, they talk about the no mind. If you sat all day with not a thought going through your mind, think of the energy you're conserving within you. Think of that chi energy that you're saving. And then what if you put your thought to one thought and put that intention into that one thought? You could put all that energy behind one thought instead of millions. And then that is very powerful in manifesting.
Dude, I so hard agree with that. I say that example to people consistently. Most people's minds run like crazy. So just imagine it. So I know a person that had an awakening experience. This guy's like a real life monk, enlightened master. I wrote about him in my book. But we had a private conversation, and he's like, I'm trying to make a long story short. He made the decision he was going to go into meditation forever until he knew what was going on. Just so happened it was 100 days of meditating 20 hours a day. And he's like, you cannot fake this. He's like, I was never coming out. And so he had an experience. All this stuff happened, kind of ayahuasca 5D type of deal. And then I was like, well, what's different? He's like, well, I wanted to test what I knew. And so I wanted to see if I could manifest $1 million without doing anything. And he's like, in 10 days, I manifested $220,000. I knew, and he's like, I don't need money. I have money, but I knew it was possible because it was measurable, and it was a signal. It was just a test. And so when he told me this, I realized how he'd been able to do it because I asked him what had changed. He says, when I walk, I walk. When I talk, I talk. When I drive, I drive. There's no outside energy being wasted. So I had this, imagine a pond or a big lake, And let's say your desire is the $1 million or a house, or let's say whatever it is, the ideal job or ideal life. You drop it in, and it's this huge boulder, and it drops in, and then the ripples start to go out into the universe, and that's your energy, right? So one focused thought with these monks just continuing on this boulder, whatever their desire is. In sport, I helped an athlete land the world's first front flip heel clicker and front flip Superman on a motorcycle. Never been done before. He didn't even practice the Superman once and stuck it because he focused on one thought. That's all he had to do. And so, but what people don't understand is that every single time you're thinking about what to eat, what you're stressed about, boom, 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 you're firing all these pebbles into that same pond. So now this beautiful big tidal wave of energy that would form for your desire is being equally distorted by random thoughts, random energy. And that's what we're putting to the quantum field. If you can just imagine space, and when they put that kind of net blanket in space, just imagine shooting out these energy packets that are your energy through your own free will. And this is a free will universe. So when we can take that energy back and direct it to where we want, then things start to change. So I just wanted to add that. So I got all fired up. Such a great comment.
We're speaking same language here, same language.
Okay, man. Well, I know we got to wrap this up very soon, so I'm gonna go with a very big subject because I have to, because it's in your book and there's all these different things. But just straight up aliens. I heard disclosures coming. I was at Contact in the Desert with you. It's all like, oh, this guy's telling the truth, and this is baloney. And then we got the real life Indiana Jones and J.J. Hertog talking about these being coming. You can't mess with J.J. Hertog. That guy's intense. It's just everybody's book there is like 5,000 pages of research. You got Robert Schoch, the leading guy on the Sphinx. It's just like, oh my God. And it all comes back to the pyramids. So your general overview, are we getting disclosure soon? What's going on there? Do you believe in aliens? Do you think it's just how can we get manipulated? What's going on with Antarctica? There's a lot of questions here, so you can just take what you want. You can just take all that.
That's like 20. We could do a show every day for a year now. No, I would say from my personal experiences, I have never come in contact with a physical alien. Never. Okay. When I say that, I mean in this 3D reality, I've never had an alien come up to me and say, hey, you want to go snowboarding? It hasn't happened. But once I've left my body and entered into other dimensions, the beings that we describe in popular culture, like the Greys, the reptilians, the insectoids, blue beings, like these beings I've seen outside of my body. So in another place or another dimension, not in a physical form. I'm sure they can speak through and I'm sure they could manifest in the third dimensions, but that might take a whole lot of energy for them to do. Do I believe in a physical alien? Many people have been abducted physically. Many people have seen physical aliens they can't explain. And I'm trying to figure out if it is a 100% physical being, or can they phase in and out of these dimensions, like a Bigfoot, for example. The more you research into Bigfoot, the more you realize that they can almost phase in and out of this world. So is that a talent that many other alien species could have? Possibly. As for disclosure, I think right now we've already have disclosure. It's all over the internet, but we have to really discern, because for every one true case, there's 1,000 false cases. So we just have to be very careful. But if you read between the lines of a lot of these contact and experiencers, the disclosure is already out there. If you're going to look towards a government official, let's say Trump is going to stand up and, basically say we have alien life and they've been visiting us for our entire inception as human races. In fact, we are the creation of many different races put together to live in this type of habitat, because those aliens couldn't live here. So they had to create bodies that can live in this world. and then they would incarnate into those bodies. So basically, you're incarnated aliens in human bodies. Is that a disclosure? We don't know, right? But he would also say he's the best alien. Sorry, that was a bad joke.
I had it on. I had it on mute. I started to laugh so hard. It was really good.
Okay, good. So you have like Dr. Stephen Greer, and you have like Richard Dolan, and you have like all these researchers and people that are pushing disclosure. Even Corey Good and David Wilcock, and all these people are pushing disclosure. So that stuff is basically out there in the open for anybody to absorb. But they all say that no government official is going to stand up and say this is it, because they're basically admitting crimes against humanity for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's either you completely forgive and forget what has been done to us in the past and move on, but I know the human track record, and people hold grudges about that stuff. So it would be very difficult to really have full, honest disclosure. And I don't think aliens are going to land on the White House lawn, because, you would get everybody in Maryland with guns running out and shooting them. So I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see. But you know what? We were just spent a week in Washington State at Mount Adams with James Gilliland at ECETI. And there is so much activity there, so much paranormal activity that, some nights we can sit out and watch the stars, just sky watch, and we can see about 100 different things in the sky in one night. That's how prevalent it is in the skies in different areas. So, there's people out there that say, oh, it doesn't exist. We're all delusional. We're smoking really good drugs.
We are Canadian.
It's not the case. It's just not the case. We just have to look. We just literally have to take the time, sit out and look, and you know what? There are satellite maps where you can track the satellites that are going above our heads, but there's also probably 10 times the amount of Black Project satellites up there that are not listed. All right, there's probably things in our space that we have no idea what's really up there. So we can look up in the sky and we could see a streak or these things flying through the sky, and we can say, oh, that's a UFO, but really it can be things we're not supposed to know about that's already up there. Not alien, humans or human-made. But I definitely believe in UFOs, alien contact, multidimensional contact. All those things can be wrapped up into one thing, which, let's just call it magic. All right, it's just all magic.
I like the answer. I was gonna talk to you about the Gilliland Ranch. So I was curious about what that experience was like. Okay, so to follow up, because again, I'm curious. I've heard about a galactic federation. So when you talked about beings being incarnated, what Dolores Cannon says was the world was being a little bit manipulated and controlled, and because of the free will universe, higher level beings can't just appear and change things. But we can incarnate and then create the example so that you have now the free will choice to choose something else. So very wonderful and practical example for me is Bruce Lee. The 44th anniversary of his death was July 20th. And this is a person that I mentored my life over, like my main inspiration of developing my mind, body, spirit. I was meditating for years. And this is where that stuff comes is, he's like, take what works for you, disregard what doesn't. And if he didn't leave that signature, I wouldn't be who I am today. I literally modeled my life off that because I respected what he did. I respected how he thought. what he was most people don't know he was a philosopher also. He had a philosophy degree, and it was really for him improving himself and he faced so much ridicule for teaching non-Chinese martial arts, for taking one way of thinking, i.e. religion or some other thing, this is the way and it's the only way. Well, he's like, nah man, like that works too. Why would I choose one way when there's all these other ways and I can take bits and pieces of what work for me? So whether you're looking at meditation or chakra balancing or energy work or business or finances or success or entrepreneur, whatever the heck you enjoy, just take the bits. Take a bit of entrepreneurship, take a bit of chakra balancing, take a bit of aliens, take no aliens, do whatever you want. Just make it your own and just follow your own gut. That's the whole point of the thing. So that was a rant. And the question is, do you do you know of or believe in some sort of like light being galactic federation that is like pulsing down energy and kind of like doing some good stuff for us? Because that's what I've heard and like. Because on the flip side, if we live in this free will zone, let's just say the annoying ones or reptilians or whatever, that's oppressors or people doing things that are not great, they're imposing a lot of energy. So do we have some good guys that are going to come in and be like, yo, quit it, like Star Trek or Star Wars or some deal like that?
I have never been taken to, let's say, sit on a council meeting of that nature, of a galactic nature. I've heard stories of others who say they're on different councils and have different information. I also think that the other side uses a lot of those type of channeled messages to confuse us more. So I do think there is a game being played right now with that type of theme of a galactic federation. Because, you can go right now on the internet and, you have Ashtar Command and Sphere Being Alliance and the Andromedan Council, and you can go and see all these different things, and a lot of them have been around for a very long time. They were writing about this stuff in the 70s even. Unarians were writing about this in the 60s and 70s about these galactic federations and different angelic councils that are working on the planet. So there is a very, very long history. And the thing is if you read all of that material from all the different councils, it's almost the same. It's almost the same, but just a different cast and characters, which I find very strange. So, and they've been saying the same thing for many years, promising the same thing for many years. So what I've done is I've stepped back and stopped listening. And what I've done is I have a new mantra now, which is if it is important to me, it will be revealed. As in, if I need to know something, it'll come to me when I need to know it. So I've stopped relying on other sources to get my information from completely. I don't read any of the new messages. I try to stick and stay very pure to the things that I receive. And then I also have to discern it as well. If I get a message, I don't go, oh my God, this is it. This is the truth. I step back, I observe, I see how it feels, and I figure out, what does it mean to me? Is this something I should share with somebody? Is this something that's going to help me in my life? And if it's not, it's just like a memory. It just goes away. You just forget about it. So we all really have to use our internet. Again, we have to find the answers within us. Sure, these other councils and beings and messages, these channeled messages, could be very positive and could initiate the awakening process within people. I think that's actually what they're doing. They're using these type of channels to initiate some form of awakening with people to get on the right path. But we have to take it to the next level. It's not like suddenly 200,000 Andromeda ships are going to show up and say, all right, Cabal, come out of your bunkers. We have you surrounded. I don't think that's going to happen. So we can't like look up at the stars and say, save us, when we fully have the power as human beings to take that power ourselves.
Man, so epic, dude. What a amazing answer. I 100% agree. I love that. I'm really just so happy the way that you're answering everything. So that's, for me, when you're looking out, like say even Galactic Alliance or Andromeda or, Pleiadian channeling. So that's where, I get curious. Like, I like channeling. Some of them are Pleiadians, and Bashar is really great. Talk about higher level concepts. But even when you're looking that way, because for me, it started with the darkness, going into conspiracy theory, Illuminati, holy crap, that's a very dark space. And you go into it for a while and then you're like, okay, cool, that's what's going on. Don't need to know anymore. Now I go over here and I'm looking at the positive beings and information and channelings and things like that. But it's all information outside of you. And that mantra is just so brilliant. So I think, again, for me, the way that I'm doing is just the way you discern information is so important. It's just information, so you could shut it down whatever you want. You can roll it around, but you don't attach to it. Or like a guru, we have a massive guru problem. No good guru. If someone's a guru and be like, yo, you realize that you followed me around for 2 years, like you're the guru, right? You realize this, like that's what I've been telling you, is that you're the master. Like it's not me. You don't need me. Like you're it. So that can happen in spirituality too. And in the galactic verse, it's like a Marvel universe. So how much do you need to be in that? How much are you grounding here in the physical? So you can definitely go too far with it. So just take the little bites that you like. And if you're really interested, go all the way down. Just don't get lost in it because you're in the 3D, you're the master, and just take, again, like roll it around in your own internet and mind and body as much or as little as you'd like.
It's really funny because I'll just end it with this, that I was with a native Canadian shaman, a real amazing elder. And, I was talking about alien stuff and other worlds and everything. And he's kind of laughing at me. And so I give him a look because I know he's kind of chuckling at what I'm saying. He goes, you're wasting your time looking at the stars. He goes, why don't you focus on your toes? And it's just brilliant. It's just really brilliant, that answer. It's like, what are you doing wasting your time looking up? Go look at your feet. Figure that out first. Because why are you here?
Totally.
Why are you standing on this earth? What is that? Stop looking away from that. And another thing is, like, even in my book, Forbidden Knowledge, I was studying with a guru, and eventually that guru said to me, I am no longer your guru, and walked away. All right. And that hurt me. It hurt me. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, did I do something wrong? And the answer was, no, I cannot teach you anymore. I'm no longer your guru. You have to go and find your own way. So it's almost like you have people along your path that take your hand for a little while. And when they get you to where you need to be, they're going to let go of your hand and help somebody else. And I think that's what we're all here for. We'll all help other people shift or move them to where they need to be, but eventually they're going to have to start walking themselves. And that's where we want to be.
I love it, dude. That is a fantastic ending. I'm going to leave it with that. So, where can people find more about you? Check out your book, which I've been able to browse a few chapters, look in, read it. It's all very interesting. Oh, nice and shiny. Also, I'm curious. I definitely want to check out. Do you have a downloadable version of the? Because I've done qigong, fallen Dafa meditation, but I'd like to experience, because after it's interesting, if you do it for a long time, you can actually feel the body and the energy move. So I'm curious to give that a shot too.
I don't have a downloadable version. I mail out a book and a DVD because I want people to have the physical information. Um, but you can find all my stuff on Amazon.com. Just look up my name, Jason Quitt, and all of my books will be there. You can also go to my website, which is thecrystalsun.com. That's thecrystalsun, sun.com. And I have everything on there from the books and DVDs to articles, videos, and other cool products like crystals
Yeah, we
and
didn't even get into that.
some bracelets and just what do I call it? Spiritual swag. Swag.
Nice.
Is that what you call it? Yeah.
Sounds good to me. I might need some, man. I'm getting prepped for Symbiosis and Burning Man, so I'll have to stock up before I go.
Oh, are you kidding me? Yeah. What the audience doesn't know is the crystals that you wear and the pendants that you wear out in public. I mean, no wonder you're so strong. You can hold those up.
Oh, right on. Woo, thanks. Oh yeah, dude, the crystal I got from the ninja, man. Like I described to people what she is, they can't even fathom. Like she's going for the eclipse. She's gonna be camping in the white desert near the pyramids, like crystal gridding the planet. Like she just, oh, I gotta go here. I'm like, who is calling you? Like, how gets a knowing, goes to a spot, drops like what? Like it's ridiculous. So thank you, man. Cool. Yeah, appreciate that.
Well, yes. So, and you can follow me on Twitter. I think it's Jason_Quitt. And you could also find me on Facebook. Just look up Jason Quitt or the Crystal Sun.